Hello, everyone. Welcome to Mining Now. I'm your host, Jared Downey. We have got, we've been covering a lot of ground on Mining Now. And if you know anything about mining, you know that there's a lot of parts and pieces to it. So we've got the leading company on supplying aftermarket parts, replacement parts, lots to cover with them. We're actually going to be doing 3 episodes with Geograph out of Australia. And we're going to kick it off with their CEO, Sam Hyder. Lots to cover, but before we do that, we're going to let you know we're still doing our heavy industry tour, and hopefully we'll never stop. So our next one is going to be in Indaba, February 6th to 9th. That's going to be in Cape Town, South Africa. And then on the Crownsman Show, we're going to be at PowerGen in Florida, February 21st to 23rd. So if you're going to either one of those events, let us know. We'll get you on a show there for an interview. And of course, thank you to Savinaw Equipment for getting us all over the world and helping us do these interviews. Okay, Sam, it's great to have you on the show.
Hello. Hi. How are you going?
Yeah, I'm good. It's exciting to have you on, and sort of if anybody's watched the show, they know I like doing these multiple episodes because it kind of allows me to build through the stories of the company. It's hard to capture a company in a 40-minute one-off. So you're the first up, though. What's your where are you located?
So we're in Perth in Western Australia. It's south and west of the main mining regions in WA. So yeah, in the main capital city of WA.
And then Geograph.
We're also located in Bunbury. So we're originally from the south of Perth, and we have manufacturing in Bunbury, which is around 50 k's or kilometres from the where we were founded, and then this main office in Perth is about 200 k's north of that.
I think we're doing an episode from your other location as well. Is it Bunbury? Is that how you say it?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're filming one there tomorrow with you. So what about globally? You distribute worldwide, though, is that correct?
Yeah, so we have a lot of clients that do business with us for our product. Our service is mainly based in Australia, but in the product side, we have distributors through South Africa, Indonesia, soon to be Canada, and in South America. We also have local distribution here through third-party logistics.
I was on your website. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think I saw like 50,000 different parts or something. It's pretty wild. So can you kind of, when you're trying to capture who the company is, how do you sort of describe it to somebody?
So typically I would say that we produce performance or high performance parts for mining machinery. And most people respond with, oh, is that even a thing? So I tend to like to use an analogy with cars. If you buy yourself a Toyota or a GM or whatever make and model of car, it's made for a budget by that company. Inherently, there are some issues with that car from its design or the way that it cools itself or some other thing that makes it not necessarily perfect because they are making it for a budget. The same thing happens with mining equipment. What we basically do is go through the equipment we're focusing on and figure out exactly what comes from the factory that's not quite as good as it could be, and we go through and improve all of those aspects in the machinery.
In business since 1960, DyeCorp is a leading private manufacturer and distributor of specialty chemicals, equipment, parts, and accessories serving the energy and mining industries. DyeCorp manufactures and distributes a full line of drillers' edge coring rods, core retrieval systems, and diamond tooling for diamond core drilling worldwide. They also manufacture and sell high-quality Earth Pro drilling fluids and additives for the mineral exploration and energy industries. For more, you can visit them at dye-corp.com or contact their head office at 780-440-4923. CIM is the leading membership organization for technical content and creating connections in the mining industry. Mining professionals and students can access a breadth of technical expertise through the CIM Technical Paper Library, the WineMine Digital Repository, the CIM Journal, the CIM Magazine, and attend upcoming CIM webinars. Whether you're working in the field, in the office, or at home, join the community today and learn how they can help you achieve your professional goals. Visit them at cim.org. Okay, so let's give a special thank you to one of our longest sponsors of the show, Savannah Equipment. And I'm actually going to hand it over to Jared so that he can give you a little bit more info on Savannah Equipment.
Yeah, thank you. So I mean, people see them as sponsors, so they'll ask me, kind of who they are, what they are, and just trying to understand the scope of the company. So Savannah Equipment is a mining supply company, and they're delivering on the whole equipment supply chain. So everything from the ore processing to underground mining, open pit. They're in hard rock and placer operations. And what they're doing is they're sourcing equipment from all over the world and then delivering it all over the world. Now, they are a Canadian company, so they're based there, but, let's say, I mean, they're selling entire ore processing plants. So there might be a plant down in Latin America, and there's a new mine that needs that plant in Africa or somewhere in the US. So they're facilitating that entire transactions. But they're also delivering, an individual conveyor or a concentrator or a pump package or just an electrical package. So it really is the whole gambit of the mining equipment supply chain.
Oh, that's great then. Well, then you definitely have to check them out if you're looking for mining equipment. Visit them at savannahEquipment.com where you will find more equipment every day.
The company's been around a long time. Is that what did it start out with supplying a specific product? Like I think it's been like what, over 50 years ago it started?
So I look at the story or the anecdote slightly changes between who's telling it, but essentially I think probably our first product would have been a farm gate. My grandfather made enhanced performance farm gates that were sturdier than your average farm gate, and he weld them all up during the week, and then on the Friday afternoon he would drive them stacked up in a ute or a truck, as you guys might call it. And he would take them, or a pickup, and take them down to the local pub, and he would sell to people who were coming out of the pub on a Friday night. So his clientele were already kind of ready to do something impulsive, and so he would sell you a gate as you're walking to your car. So, like I say, the story kind of changes here and there depending on who's telling it. But
Like one's a church, one's a pub, like that kind of change, or
yeah. And it wasn't gates; it's some other thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So no, it was definitely gates. It was definitely in a pickup, and it was definitely out the front of a pub. So so that would be our first enhanced performance product, I think, in '68. But in all seriousness, we've been focusing more on the mining and surface mining industries for probably the greater part of 30 to 40 years. A lot of it started out as jobbing, so fixing particular one-off products that were special. And then we identified some fairly key markets for pins and bushes to bring some more regularity to the product and sort of more consistent demand, because it was very lumpy demand. And so it would drive you through this almost feast and famine cycle.
Right.
So
yeah.
we wanted to balance that out with something a bit more regular. We're also seeing the advent of NC, or numerically controlled machines. So we had some of the first NC machines in WA and Australia. And so we were looking to something that would fill those machines, and something that we could automate around even back then. So that was in the 80s. And then it built from there. So we've gained a lot of popularity for providing a reduced cost product. So at that time, we only really made the main supply of that product was just aftermarket. So the same thing sold cheaply. And then over time, we started developing very small aspects to our product that was slightly better than an OEM. We did it somewhat out of necessity when we first started, because we couldn't just be as good as the OEM. We had to be better. We had to be faster to market. We had to be cheaper, because back then, as it is now to some extent, but not nearly as badly, because they were the default setting, no one ever got fired for buying the OEM parts. It was only someone who took a risk, stuck their neck out and bought one of our products. If anything went wrong, they immediately blamed something that was new or something that wasn't the original. And so it was a difficult time to get started from a quality point of view, and then trying to prove to people before things like data analytics even existed, and that spreadsheets and trend graphs were printed on pieces of paper and plotted by hand. It was very difficult to try and prove the merit of changing metallurgy, changing surface finish, changing any aspect that was more technical than the buyer could comprehend, and then trying to sell it for anywhere near an OEM price. Yeah, it was a very challenging time to get started. Although there's always been supply concerns, so being very vertically integrated, even at the beginning, we were able to have a lot of control over delivery times. So our promises are better.
Do you still run into that? I mean, do you still run into people? Is there still that sort of OEM versus, what you're delivering as an aftermarket product or as a replacement to an OEM? Is there still that sort of ongoing discussion? I especially on a global level while you expand.
Yeah. So in Western Australia, actually in the whole of Australia, the one of the largest, if not the largest, recruiter of apprentices out of schools in the trades that are associated with this kind of product. All are hired by people like Caterpillar, people like Hitachi. The big OEMs are the big hirers of apprentices. So they're indoctrinated into the idea that when you repair a truck, you just assume that there's a list of parts that you use. It'd be like working for GM or Nissan or whoever you're working for from an apprentice. You assume, oh, if I need a part, I go back to the OE, so or the OEM. So trying to, and it's got a lot better now because what's happening is that even though those roles and those people in those backgrounds exist, when they come into the mining environment, there's a different contingent of people in a mining environment that maybe don't exist from a maintenance point of view back in their training. So you would arrive at a mine site and they would have now, with the advent of performance analytics, data analytics, and reliability engineering, the reliability contingent and the engineering contingent are a very strong cohort of people with a lot of influence, whereas we sort of saw this transition between having no reliability engineers and then maybe you would get one, but they were a bit obscure and off to one side, and their projects would typically be one-off projects, not systemic structural change. So as we got further forward, these people would come in and say, oh, this is how I did it in my apprenticeship, and back with my employer, my original employer, this is actually how we do. These are our preferred providers. And so they somewhat get overridden. And then once they get the experience and the comfort, then using our aftermarket parts or using something that doesn't look the same as the OEM product, but lasts longer or is easier to fit or is safer to install, people get used to it and then can't do without it. So we've noticed that data analytics can't lie. We've noticed that reliability teams really are a great advocate for what we're trying.
When you're with, mining equipment is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. We don't really know where it's going to stop. Is that, what does that ever present any challenges to you? I'm kind of looping that into another thing I want to discuss is that sort of delivering as the market changes or the equipment gets bigger, but also sort of how you choose to grow as well, because you're having to choose these areas to focus on. So I guess a two-part question. First, the equipment getting larger, does that have its own set of challenges, sort of delivering on that?
So it's been interesting. I've heard a recent story about them having a look at smaller versions of the trucks to be produced as more of a train system. And so they have a smaller dose of ore going into a truck, but they have it more often. And that the cost of maintenance of a smaller piece of equipment is non-linear. So it's actually getting greater advantages than just half the truck size, half of the maintenance cost. You're also getting a lot less heavy lifting, smaller components, whereas some of these bigger machines, we're doing a pin at the moment for diggers it's upwards of 2 ton in weight. And so when you're dealing with a 2 ton pin and trying to fit a 2 ton pin, you're talking a team of people. Whereas I think if you're fitting a pin that can be lifted by hand or, it's a 2-man job, over time, you're talking, like I say, greater than linear benefit running a smaller truck. You can also keep a greater level of spares, even spare trucks, things like that. So, yeah, the 793 and the 797 is kind of where we've seen it top out for the truck, as a CAT equivalent. The EX8000 for the Hitachi diggers, the I think it's the 6090 or the RH400 for the Caterpillar excavators. That kind of stopped for the minute. We've seen a lot of dynamic changes as well with the product itself. So not necessarily trying to adapt just to different sizes, but also to adapting to a world where inventory is being cut back and will remain cut back. What we noticed in the downturn was that there was a lot of inventory to start with. And so probably the worst 12 to 24 months of the mining downturn for us in maybe 2012 through to 2014, a lot of it was due to the fact that they had such a massive surplus of inventory. So also trying to cater to the demand where you're not necessarily producing arbitrary batch sizes and arbitrary quantities for people replenishing stock, but more replenishing people's demand for upcoming maintenance, not necessarily upcoming stock replenishment. So that's been an interesting one too. As a little anecdote, there was a machine that we purchased 2 years ago, and it was a 12-month delivery, and we'd done all of our calculations on the size and weight ranges of the product that we were producing. And by the time the machine was delivered to us, the work scope of the product had increased in size and weight by 40%.
Wow.
And then what we saw as being one machine 85% full, then became two machines 75% full within a 12-month period. So a combination of growth into new markets and producing new products, but also, the size range transition was very real for us as well.
So how do you sort of, do you sort of have a format for how you approach actually expanding the business, the decisions you make? Do you sort of have a methodology that you use?
So we've been developing our strategic capabilities for some time. We've been working from essentially a one-page strategic plan, which starts out at our purpose and our vision for the business, our values, and then goes all the way through to what we're going to do in any given quarter. So there's a whole bunch we do in that scope. We've also developed distinct teams or discrete teams between the senior team, the middle team, and then the lower level teams. We're seeing that from a leadership retention, internal succession development point of view, it's been very, very successful to map our strategy, but then be very open about communicating that. So we've been trying for a few years now to go to an open book management style. We've always been quite collaborative, but now we're really taking that to the new level. So giving mid-managers ownership over budgetary lines and things like that, so that they can manage their own spend, they can manage their peer groups and their personal group spend, and then there's transparency amongst senior leaders and middle managers to really hold each other accountable. So it's nothing surprising to see a mid-manager hold a senior manager accountable for maybe exceeding budget or maybe not sticking to the plan that we set forward as a group. But it's a very healthy environment where not a lot is left on the table from a sort of a hacked out or a robust conversation type of scenario.
What sort of brought you to pursuing that style, that open book style?
I used to try and manage like I thought was required of me from a textbook. And it was really, I found it quite stressful, and I thought it was just me. I thought that I had to be more directive. I thought that I had to be more autocratic, but I found it very stressful. Anyway, I take a personality test that's related to how you lead, and it measures how much you're away from your natural style.
Mm.
And I think the statistic came back that an autocratic style was 97% at odds with my personal collaborative style.
Right.
That I was absolutely a bring everybody along, include everybody, do everything together type of person. And the guy, I'll never forget it, the guy just said the 97% is the measure of your stress level. So you're feeling stressed because you're trying to be someone you're not. There's plenty of successful collaborative and supportive leaders out there. Just be who you are.
Mm-hmm.
It was a turning point for me. And I've really tried to take it to the next level with staff. So we ran a promotional video some time ago that talks about work being a place that you want to come and actually wake up in the morning excited to be here. We have definitely tried to embody that through what we actually do, so our actions, not just our words. The inclusiveness is part of that. I want people to understand exactly what it takes to run this business profitably and how they might help, because it typically seems to be that it is logical that there's a correlation between someone at an A level, someone who's really wanting to get in here and make a difference, and someone who wants to know more than your average bear around how the business works and what the levers are that you can pull to tweak this thing to get the most out of it. And so including people that are enthusiastic and then having them go away and come up with unique ideas. I couldn't run this place myself, not even close. There's people out there in my team doing jobs where I wouldn't even know where to start. So bringing them in and having them educate me on how they do their job is part of the enjoyment for me. I remember when COVID hit, it took a very short amount of time for us to all want to come back in here, because we I know it sounds corny, but we actually missed each other.
Yeah.
It was very enjoyable to be back here with the banter and really comparing notes with each other. And I just realized how much of the magic happens when you're all together in the office, actually seeing each other face to face.
When you said about that stress level being 97%, when you change course though, those sort of when you develop an unnatural habit, it doesn't necessarily unnaturally develop. How much time did that sort of take to, I mean, just from chatting you seem very relaxed, so that's a good sign. But how long did it sort of take to dial that back and to sort of get back to building on sort of your natural strengths?
Yeah, look, thank you for waking me. I was asleep under my desk. I was that relaxed for this interview.
I know the feeling.
No, look, it was interesting because I read a few very influential books. I read Ricardo Semler's Maverick, and I also read Jim Collins' Good to Great. And those books were really turning points for me, especially Maverick, because he took over the business in Brazil when he was 21, and he I think got rid of 40% of his board within 6 months of starting. I think it was. It's been years since I've read it, but certain things really stuck with me about how he made it into a super successful business by working with the people and starting to trust and respect them as adults, as essentially, for lack of a better term. And the more that I talked to people and enjoyed working with them, I just found myself being able to more freely delegate what was more appropriate, sitting with people who knew how to do the job better. And then I finally got to a point where, as you say, I look really relaxed. I feel like I could do this forever. And previously to that, I felt like it was unsustainable. I felt like, wow, I'm not sleeping well. I'm eating poorly, and it felt like, oh, something's got to give. Whereas now I feel like, there's an article, Corporate Athlete, that talks about making sure that you balance up 5 aspects of your life. One of them is your mental health. This is absolutely a mental health play for me, and for everybody else. I'm constantly talking about the idea that if they're feeling full, if they're feeling unsustainably full, how do they think that they're going to take this business from this size to double its size in 5 to 7 years?
Yeah.
If you're full now, does that not mean that linearly you're going to be at 200% of your capacity? That doesn't work. You've got to be half full. And if you're not running out of things to do on a daily basis, you're doing something wrong. And let's talk about it. Start making a few mistakes because you're trying new things you've never done before. And then we can talk about it, because to me, that's what success looks like, especially for the middle managers who are starting to manage teams, even in handful-sized teams for the first time. The people side of things, you've got to have the energy for. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to be empathetic. You're not going to be able to be in it for the long haul with them. You're not going to be that effective coach because you're drained yourself. And people have different styles. I've definitely noticed that, and I think it's acknowledging and respecting different styles as well.
Yeah,
whether that's technical or those sorts of things.
Yeah, it's really not a matter of how to lead; it's how you should lead, and then building off that, which can be a very it's a very you actually took a test that said, and you went, oh yeah, no, that makes sense. So that's you should probably, if you can, send us a link to I don't know if that's a test that you can take somewhere, but I'd love to share that with people.
It
The
was
one,
just the disc for managers test. It
oh
was called the disc for managers test. And oh man, we're talking though maybe 15 years ago, so I'm sure it's changed. Oh,
yeah,
12 years ago. So it's DISC, spelled DISC. So, and they're the four. That's the acronym for the four leadership styles.
Hexagon's technology and solutions enable stakeholders across the mining industry to make better decisions faster. Get smarter integrated cloudware, sensor software solutions, and in-field apps that connect mines to boardrooms in real time. Hexagon offers safer, autonomous, more sustainable open pit and underground mining solutions spanning exploration and planning, safety, and operations. Visit hexagon.com/mining or email info.min@hexagon.com today.
Introducing the SolarSet Fold. The new foldable frame solar system brings power to your residential and commercial property and can be shipped worldwide. Like all SolarSet products, the SolarSet Fold comes turnkey, pre-assembled, and is easily transported and installed. Learn more about SolarSet Fold and their full line of amazing solar systems at solarset.com.
sort of pulling it back to mining specific, and keeping that sort of changing directions theme. The industry in the safety side of things, the industry has taken a whole new focus on that. Has that has your business done the same thing? Has there been a lot of changes that we needed to be implemented? Like I'm talking about over like the last 10, 15 years when those changes starting to really come across the industry. Has it kind of come to you as well?
Yeah, look, I think from an internal point of view, we've definitely had everything sped up. We've, productivity's always required to be going up. Lean dictates that, these constant efficiencies and continuous improvement are required. So definitely there's been a lot more, I would say, a lot more control and a lot more, what would you say, almost like exception-based rules. So people making mistakes as an exception to the norm, but a rule being created based on the exception to prevent it happening to anyone, even though
Right.
this is the
Yep.
probability of it happening a second time. So a lot of things, not red tape per se, because it's perfectly valid to assume that if something can happen once, it can happen again. But really, it's forced people to look elsewhere to try and make up for that efficiency loss, because you can't take shortcuts, which is perfectly understandable. But I can see there that you have to switch focus, and you might have to remove that process altogether, or you might have to upgrade or provide an engineering mechanical change to be able to avoid doing that job, or change the way fundamentally it's done. There's the same thing happening in our customers. So what we're probably noticing there is that you're going from a controlled environment where you might have done your initial apprenticeship, and you're working from a point of view where you've got all the tools on hand, you've got stock, you've got facilities, overhead craneage, adequate lighting, the temperature range is more compatible with not having to necessarily wear gloves or heavy gear to do work. And so what we're noticing is that when you go from that controlled environment to an uncontrolled environment, you're increasing your risk. So then it all becomes about statistical probabilities. And so what we're trying to do is understand, well, the probability of hurting yourself with this work type occurring, because that work type occurs in an uncontrolled environment when the truck has been subject to very high wear and tear for an extended period. You can then see, all right, well, what we'd be better off doing is either understanding how you can create a more controlled environment, or understanding how a product can be changed, maintained, or checked for condition in any environment and still be perfectly safe. So one of the key examples would be a collared pin assembly. So you'll have pins and bushers going into, say, a hoist assembly or a tray assembly, and on a truck. And if the pin seizes in the back of the truck, at a lot of places that we deal with, you would need to thermal lance that pin out. Now that requires a spotter, it requires a hot work permit, it requires the wheels to come off the truck. There is a heap of work in there to make sure that it's done safely, and inherently you have a risk of fire, you have a risk of burn and other injury because sparks literally fly at random angles for as long as it takes you to cut this pin out. So what we developed, which has been in the industry for quite a while, and there are a number of providers, and some OEs I think now do them as standard, but a collared pin assembly. So you have two collared bushes in each side, and then you have a tapered pin in the middle. You then have an extraction tool, which you screw in, you pull out one bush, you pull out the other bush, you pull out the pin, or you pull out the bush, the pin, and then the other bush from the other side. No hot work. You can do it all with a shifter and a couple of other tools. So the lancing is completely removed. And so you can produce the same result in a controlled environment as an uncontrolled environment with that type of engineering change. And there's no change to the safety risk. There's no increase in statistical probability beyond reasonable that you're going to hurt yourself or burn yourself. So those kind of changes we've noticed get a huge amount of airplay with our customers because they inherently know, firstly, the compound effect of you've got to find a guy, you've got to find a good guy, you've got to find the guy with the skill, you've got to find a guy with the experience, you've then got to get him on a shift working with a team of people that also know how to do that job, and then they're pulling apart a truck. If one of those guys gets hurt, if one of those guys can't rock up to work because he's got a burnt hand or some other thing, or he's asked to leave site because of unsafe work practices associated with thermal lancing, you've broken that whole chain, and to try and find a replacement for that guy or try and make up that maintenance team with one man down, you're talking shift changes. If you think about and extrapolate the cost of that, it's just massive. And previously, years ago, we could only imagine that, but you'd go, oh, just in principle, you can tell it's worth a lot of money. Now they're working the data out, which is just phenomenal. It's fantastic to see, oh, this actually works out to X thousand tons, this amount of dollars to maintain fleet, the total cost of ownership increase over this many years. And then they go, oh, actually, a collared pin assembly that costs 10% more than the OEM pin and bush actually saves us 50x on its cost. And so,
Right.
yeah, we'd happily pay the premium price for the premium enhanced performance product.
Yeah.
So we're seeing a massive, and when you say safety or you say asset utilization increase, everybody knows that it's comparison magnifier. So say safety 50 to 1, utilization 30 to 1. Cost of product is 1 to 1. You save $1 on the product, you save $1. You save $1 on safety, or you say one safety event, you could be saving $100,000.
Yeah.
So they're just seeing the magnifiers because they now have the ability to do this math.
And having all that in place and having all that data, that just from a competitive standpoint gives you just a huge edge when it's coupled with all the experience you bring to the industry.
We still rely a little bit on the customer to tell us. So we're looking to take matters into our own hands a little bit and work on some testing facilities that we're still in the prototyping phase. But we're looking to try and bring that in-house as well, so we can do some scientific analysis in real-world or real-world applications.
Right. Well,
world. Not just on computers, not just in finite element analysis in that.
Well, hopefully these 3 episodes we do with you go good, and then we can circle back and do an episode on that, because that sounds like when that actually comes online, that would be great. The other thing I wanted to ask, I wanted to sort of get an idea, maybe if you had like an example or something of sort of that outside of like a replacement part, sort of the customer coming and going, hey, we got a problem. We need you to fix something. And I'm sure you run into that a lot. Could you sort of maybe if there's an example or something, sort of walk us through it, just to sort of give our audience an idea of how you'd even approach that?
Okay, so probably the most prominent case recently is with a tool that we created. So we had a customer talking to us about wanting to solve a problem where when they were pulling the steering pins from the steering assembly underneath the 793 truck, the process of doing that was quite unsafe. So in some cases, the knuckle would actually seize in the hole and so it's a tapered fit, and when you put it in, you screw a nut from the bottom to get it to lock in place. So over time, that would wear out, and you would retighten it, or you would do something to it through the use of the truck, and eventually it would seize a lot of the time. And so getting them back out, there was no easy way to get under the truck, and so people would be using a hammer and drift underneath, or they would be lowering the truck onto a spike so that it would put pressure on it and try and release that stud or pop it, as they say, from the taper. As you can imagine, me just describing the process sounds pretty gnarly. It sounds pretty unsafe. I refer back to the statistical probability. You can imagine it spiking on the Richter of risk and freaking everybody out. And so that process, as sort of risky as it was still taking anywhere between, say, we sort of thought the best one would be maybe an hour, and then the outside one where you had a really seized stud in there would be possibly 12 to 14 hours, which is just, it's a long time to be pulling one part from another. So we had a look at essentially like an inverted pressing tool. We had a range of challenges because the surrounding mounting spaces that we could use to anchor from were all cast. And so, as you imagine with castings, they're rounded or they're rough or they're not equal, and so it's not exactly the same on either side. And so we came up essentially with like a little finger type of system that would hang over the top. We had to re-engineer it a few times to get enough strength without the fingers breaking off. We had to also specially treat the material, and then essentially we got it to rate up. I think the current rating at the moment is around 50 tonne up, with no hesitation. And that tool, we also wanted to make it so that one person could lift it. We wanted to make the handles ergonomic. For us, it's this thing where we want to do the right thing by the user as well. And so we made it as ergonomic as possible and got it as light as we possibly could. So the end state was that we got it so that you could fit it up one person, you set it up in about 5 minutes, and it would take you around about 5 to 10 minutes maximum to press a stud. So we were reducing, and there's 8 studs. I think the tool can do around 6 of those 8 studs. So we were reducing, in some cases, the overall steering component change out by 36 to 40 hours.
Geograph has been a long-term supplier of ball stud kits for several Caterpillar trucks. The ball stud removal procedure has traditionally been challenging and time-consuming. Using our extensive experience in precision manufacturing and industry know-how, we have designed and engineered a tool to aid in their removal. Our ball stud removal tool, or BSRT, is purpose-built to efficiently remove a ball stud in the time it takes to watch this video. The BSRT reduces the need for multiple tools and eliminates non-compliant procedures in ball stud changeouts, resulting in lower risk to your employees and a safer worksite. Using a hydraulic pressing system, the BSRT removes studs significantly faster while minimizing stress on the steering components, preventing unwanted wear on the vehicle. With a high success rate removing ball studs on the first attempt, combined with the lightweight design for single-person operation, the BSRT offers a safer, more efficient and reduced labour solution. With variants available to suit trucks fitted with extended life brake packs, the BSRT is designed to deliver results to your workshop. Geograph's BSRT is safe and easy to use. Its general ease of use is summarised in the following simple steps. Prior to lifting the tool, read the manual and safety instructions provided. Remove the tool from the case, then move or rotate the tie rod clamp out of the way and level the tie rod end as much as practical. Loosen the ball stud nut several turns to give 2 to 3 mm clearance. Insert the ball stud removal tool body between the steering arm and tie rod. Then insert the retainer into the groove and insert the blade fully through both slots in the retainer. Fit the spacer and supplied hydraulic cylinder. Apply hydraulic pressure until the piston is 1 mm away from the base of the ball stud and centralize the tool. Increase cylinder pressure gradually until the ball stud releases. Release cylinder pressure and dismount the BSRT. The ball stud nut and tie rod can now be removed. The BSRT can be returned to its case. An Australian innovation, the ball stud removal tool is the world's leading tool for safer, faster ball stud removals. Find out more at geograph.com.au/BSRT.
So from an R&D perspective, obviously it's pretty clear the value of it, but how long would something like that take to develop, design, test, all the things that it needs to go into get it actually bringing that to market?
So a couple of people worked on it from scratch. Some delays were caused by not being able to get a hold of the actual truck itself. So getting to site is a bit of a challenge because
Right.
they have to make a special request for you to access sites and things like that. But from an internal perspective, I'd say there would have been about 6 months worth of work to get version 1, the first working prototype out to market. So getting access to site was a bit difficult. As you might imagine, they have to make special requests to get to site to trial new tools and those sorts of things that can sometimes take some time. And then we got to version 2, 3. We really wanted to iterate on what we'd done and make special changes so that we could make it even more user-friendly, little tools and bits and pieces to help set up and break down. Also putting it in a Pelican case and making sure it was all looking beautiful. So yeah, we're at the final version, and it probably took 12 to 18 months. That's probably a wide scope. I'd say let's be conservative. It was 18 months to have something where it rolls off the shelf and we're not making any major changes to it at all.
Well,
So, some can be quicker than others. It would highly depend on the technicality. This was a reasonably technical issue, but when someone's saying, "Oh, I've got the same issue with a new product that we had previously, could you please apply this new fix?" That is very rapid. So we could put crosshatch grooves or fishnet grooves into a new bush that doesn't have them. It's essentially a feature that allows you to get more even grease distribution inside a bush, so that you're more effectively using that grease evenly. That might take a couple of months at most.
Right.
To put into a product.
Well, I guess one of that sort of leads me to another question, which is you've got, I mean, I see the images you have behind you. One of them, is the goal, to be Australia's #1 provider of enhanced performance part. And I love the 2025, then sort of faded in the distance to 2027. And so of course, a question that comes to my mind is, how do you choose? I mean, your R&D team, your designers team, like, how do you choose what to take on? Because if you're, even if something takes 2 months, if you've got 10 of those projects going, that's quite a lot of development. So how do you sort of approach that? Do you have a team or multiple teams to set aside just continuously working on those types of projects?
Yeah, so we essentially just pick products. So we always have a working list of new developments that we're prioritizing and reprioritizing. So typically speaking, we would have like-for-like product to backfill anything. We've got a good road runway of product coming through. And then what we would do is if someone comes to us with an issue or our account managers are out at site. So one of the main things I've asked all of our account managers to do is say, right, find more problems. Find more problems that are aligned with our core focus. You mentioned 50,000 products. I'm trying to get that down. I don't see any reason why we should be trying to produce any more than around 10,000 products, because to me, a wider breadth means a loss of fidelity on being the best. So we want to be the world's best at less. And we've noticed that whenever we focus, we end up with something that really breaks through and makes a difference. And I can see here as well, we've recently had to say no to a few things because there's simply not there's not this underlying reiteration of focusing and
Right.
solving a problem properly would be another generalist trying to solve a problem. So the problem, for example, might be, it constantly takes us 6 months to get this product because it's hard to make from XYZ place. For us, that's not necessarily a design and real enhanced performance product opportunity. That's more of a commercial supply opportunity. And so for us, we're looking at products that build loyalty, products that build partnerships, products that you can compound the difference. We're looking for marginal gain, assuming that the marginal gains are only accomplished if you're constantly improving how you do business, how you do maintenance.
Right.
So we prioritize based on mainly relationship, and then secondly, the impact that this product will have on that customer and the market that they're in.
You know, when you're talking, what made me think of it, where I sort of started to even become aware of, because you see so much, it's not really publicized as much, this type of approach, because it's not as easy to write about it and promote sort of on like platforms, even like social media. If you're doing something dramatic every week, it's a lot easier to kind of push it out there. But then when I saw it, as I started studying Honda a little bit, and just the way that they even developed their models so slowly, but it's so precise. Like, you know, you'll look at different vehicles, but you get in a Honda, I mean, just the way they're put together is perfect. Like there's no fat. It's just right to what it needs to be. And then like little features on other vehicles and stuff, but just the design and the way they're put together. So how do you sort of approach, would you say that's your big, like you said, from 50,000 to 10,000 and sort of everything you're talking about? Would that be out of three? Would that be one of the big three things that you're focusing on over the next few years? What are sort of those top three for you?
So probably top three for us would be this conversion over to being more enhanced performance than like for like. At the moment, we produce about 30% of our product is a like for. 30% of our product is an enhanced or unique version of some origin product.
I see.
The other 70% is like for like product that we still produce. So there's still a lot of commercial merit for us in doing our like for like parts. But what we're really looking to do is go out, partner with clients more closely, and start having ongoing relationships with continuous improvement. So, I mean, look, one of my ultimate goals is to work with a company to restructure a truck overhaul like an F1 pit stop. I did some research and I've done a fair bit of looking into how the F1 teams iteratively improve around statistics, team sizes, things like that. There's a book called Formula X, and it really resonated with me around how they work, and the fact that I think up to a third of Red Bull or Mercedes team is working on the next season while they're still in the current season.
Wow.
And that they can cut something like 2 seconds out of a lap time from start to finish of season. And they can make design improvements to aerodynamic components of non-critical nature within 1 week. So they can be working on it while they're racing 1 week, or have a look and see something on the car and say, I think it might be able to improve. 3D print, wind tunnel, testing, production, fit to car, race next week, which I just think is absolutely phenomenal. Wouldn't it be cool to work with a customer to say, right, you've got 4793 trucks, let's do a time motion study. Okay, it takes 8 people, 12 hours each over a 3-week period or a 1-week period perhaps to do a 3,000 hour service on a 793. What about if the name of the game or the rule of the game was we wanted to halve the time it took? Just like a pit stop. I mean, I think the wheel nut on an F1 car has gone through something like 12 iterations from its original design to what it is currently.
Wow.
To make just that iterative improvement. I can see that happening and see that capable of being done in mining. It's just someone's going to decide that they're going to focus and get that done once and for all. I say once and for all, keeping the spirit of continuous improvement, but I can see there's massive gains regardless of 3D printing and all these other things, Industry 4.0, some real basic fundamentals about taking time motion seriously that, that could have leaps and bounds improvements in mining companies. So that's where I want to head up. That's what I'm looking
Did that vision that you're sort of able to bring now and sort of work the company towards, to circle back to, 97% of trying to do it in the way that you're naturally developed to do, and having that matching 97 stress level. Do you think sort of refocusing yourself and getting back to that, has that allowed you to sort of even develop these ideas? Could have you done all this and put this vision in place without having done that first?
I think it would have been more difficult if our management philosophy in any way had people disconnected from each other and not feeling like this was a collaborative or team environment. I think what we really want to do in the future is feel very proud of what we're doing because it's us, and we're wearing the cap or the hat with pride because we're the OEM of a product range that we can call our own. There was always you would brand our product and have merchandise and things like that. And it was cool because we were proud of our values. We were proud of the team and our history and a few other things. But it wasn't that the product was cool. It wasn't that you felt like it was yours. You were essentially replacing something that was already made by someone else. And you're doing the same thing as someone else, except you were cheaper. It just, yeah, awesome. How cool is that sort of thing? Whereas now, I can see the more that we develop, the more pride there seems to be, and it's cool because we're the best at it, and we're like a niche of people that are doing this thing that, like anything else, you have a standalone product of your own. You happily wear a hat with, I don't know, a clothing label on it, something because of what they represent. It was almost like we'd been waiting to have an emergent identity that was more us than it was trying to be someone else. And so as we're developing more product, people are, have you got a spare hat, or have you got a, this? And we're noticing people, on videos and things that we're seeing from our customers, we're starting to see a hat being worn fishing trips and things like that. Yeah. And I'm feeling more excited about it too. I'm thinking to myself, yeah, we're the guys that are out there doing F1 pit stops for mining trucks. That would be super cool. That is a hat I would wear. And so I think that the change is going to be easy because we're going to the desirable outcome. We're not trying to jump off a lily pad that's sinking. We're not trying to avoid disaster. We're striving to this great or this feeling that we're truly unique. And so, yeah, it has a lot more inspired people behind it now than what was previously. Probably a few years ago, we had to look at doing these goals like you see behind me, and it had less inspiration because it was just growth, or it was just we want to do more of the same thing. Whereas now, what we want to do is make our one of our key taglines is to solve problems that matter. Now, solving a problem of replacing a part that might cost too much is not, for me, a problem that matters. Reducing shutdown by 40 hours for the rest of that fleet's life, every time they bring one in, that is a problem that matters. Making a product more safe, that's a product that matters. And I think that if we're making things safer on site, someone can put on that hat and say, these guys are doing something significant for me. So for me, that's why it feels like this change is almost inherently natural to our progression. Rather than trying to steer the ship in a different direction.
Right. Yeah, no, it's beautiful. It really is. And I guess I have to ask the last closing question I have is that it must kind of feel like an honor that beginning, your grandfather delivering great gates in front of it was a church or a bar. I can't remember the story now, but
no one does. Fun.
But that must be something you really do wear with pride, is keeping that legacy going, but really bringing your own development to it, which is so important.
Mm.
Do you stop and think about that at this point, of kind of what that means as a generational thing?
Look, I stopped and thought about it in the mining downturn a lot.
Yeah.
I did get to a point where it was really a do or die scenario for us through that downturn, because it was so long and it was such a massive depression in the amount of work that we were getting, and we didn't have the systems and the goals and things like that really clearly identified, and so we were kind of looking ahead into darkness rather than stick to our plan that we know works, and double down. And so definitely had it hanging over my head, because in 2012, I'd been running the company as CEO for probably 2 months. And so it was really my first job to get us through that as CEO. I'm actually very thankful that my dad left me largely to it. Like, we were checking in probably 2 or 3 times a day with each other to provide status updates and results on efforts that we were making. But he left me largely to set this up, because I was reading profusely at that stage, looking for anything that I could use to give us an edge to turn the tide. So look, definitely in that period of time, I felt a huge weight of legacy to continue it on. Every time we're in a position where we could do something that might present itself as easy, but might bend some rules, it absolutely smacks me around and says, you're managing a 54-year-old business. You're not managing something that's been around for 12 months. Your reputation is everything. Your ethical approach is everything.
Yeah.
You want to be able to sleep at night, and you want to hand something to your kids that isn't a poison chalice. Those sorts of things, absolutely. And then looking at Good to Great and a lot of Jim Collins' work, the mark of the best leaders are the ones that hand over a business that doesn't drop. Their stock price doesn't go anywhere. It continues to go up, which means that it's not necessarily the leader's pride and ego and sheer will in some cases that drives that company to success. It's actually what he's built as a lasting legacy. I want to hand over something to my brother, sister, and my generation, of our kids, that doesn't blip. It doesn't then start precipitously falling as a result of the key man having gone in. I'm not in a position where I feel I need to be that. So it comes up in all sorts of scenarios, and I think it's been a fantastic guiding light. Certainly when I do say that we're over 50 years old, there's more raised eyebrows than any other aspect of our businesses that we have been going for quite some time. And it just feels so good to be in the healthiest place we've ever been, doing what I can see as a clear path forward, but it'll easily see through the next 10 years. It'll easily see us through to this thing where I'm not going to be having to reinvent necessarily every 5 minutes to try and take advantage of situations so that we can just keep ourselves bobbing along. We're really seeing some big strengths and some of our biggest successes coming from tastes of our future.
Well, I really can't think of a better place to leave it there than there. Thanks, Sam, for kind of walking through it and letting me just ask questions sort of freely. And it's absolutely fantastic. And I think a good way to end the interview, but a great way to start this one of 3-part series with you. So thanks for coming on, and I hope we get to do it again soon.
Excellent. Cheers. Thanks for your time too.
Cheers. And thank you everybody for watching. There's a few interviews that I've done, and I love the technical stuff, but there's also some that just sort of stand out from a leadership and development standpoint, and this is certainly one of those. So thank you everybody for watching. I hope you learned as much as I did. We will see you on the next episode of Mining Now.